I have lost count of how many Americans have sat across from me clutching a food diary and wondering why their waist keeps growing despite eating less. And the hardest truth I have to share is this: the most dangerous thing in weight loss is not a donut or a plate of fries. It is a comforting slogan that quietly keeps your fat cells locked. The idea that eating fewer calories than you burn is all that matters makes sense on paper. Yet, in the human body, hormones run the show. And that is where so many good people get hurt. If you want a safer path starting tonight, let your hormones lead rather than your calorie counter. Ease back on the fast sugars that surge insulin. Leave a wider window between your evening meal and breakfast so your metabolism can switch from storing to burning. And notice what happens when hunger finally looses its grip. This is not a sales pitch. It is physiology we teach medical students. Insulin is the storage foreman that decides whether energy gets burned or parked. Cortisol from stress and poor sleep pours sugar into the blood and whispers to insulin to stash it away. And highly refined starches behave like kindling that flashes into flame while fiber-rich foods slow the fire. You can see how the old slogan becomes a trap, because two foods with the same calories can push your hormones in opposite directions. One keeps you satisfied while the other leaves you restless and craving. One calms your blood sugar while the other whips it into a storm. And over weeks, that difference shows up not just on the scale, but in how your joints feel, how clearly you think, and how deeply you sleep. Here is the promise and the caution. Calories still count in the long run, yet the way your body handles them is shaped by signals. So if you have been white-knuckling a low-calorie diet and feeling worse, you are not broken. You have been following a map that leaves out the mountains, and the better map begins with steadier insulin, gentler evenings, and food that leaves you truly full, rather than chasing another bite. Stay with me, because in a moment, I will show you the simple switches that help your hormones work for you instead of against you. Why that matters even more after midlife, and how to test it in your own kitchen with steps so small you can start before bed tonight. And yes, we will lean on what decades of clinical research from major American institutions have already confirmed, so you can move forward with confidence rather than fear. I remember one woman who came into my office almost in tears. She had been cutting her calories so tightly that dinner was nothing more than a glass of wine and a thin slice of bread. Yet the scale would not budge. And here is the trap that breaks so many hearts. A single bite of the wrong carbohydrate can lift insulin just enough to shut off fat burning for hours. So while she thought she was being disciplined, she was really stuck in neutral. That is the dark side of the calorie story. The promise is simple math, but the pitfall is that hormones do not follow math. They follow chemistry, and the body treats 100 calories of soda very differently from 100 calories of steak. The advantage of the old slogan is that it gives people a sense of control. You can count, you can measure, you can track, and that feels empowering. But the flaw is cruel, because the body does not honor the numbers the way a ledger book does, and a person ends up hungry, frustrated, and convinced they lack willpower, when in truth their biology is blocking the way. Research from the Mayo Clinic has shown that even modest spikes of insulin after small carbohydrate loads can halt fat oxidation, meaning that the body literally stops dipping into its own reserves. And when cortisol from stress or poor sleep is layered on top, insulin rises further, locking fat even tighter into storage. Imagine stepping on the brake every time you tap the gas. That is what living on the calorie myth feels like. You keep trying harder, but the car never moves forward. That is why moderation, as preached by food advertising, can be so misleading. Because for some bodies, a taste is not harmless. It is a trigger that awakens cravings and restlessness, and once that cycle begins, the evening ends with a raid on the pantry rather than restful sleep. The healthier way is not to fight hunger with sheer grit, but to work with your hormones. And even something as simple as swapping juice for the whole fruit lets fiber cushion the rise of blood sugar, leaving you calmer and fuller. In a moment, I will walk you into the heart of this hormonal dance, showing how insulin, cortisol, and other signals decide whether you are storing or burning, and why this matters even more as we move through midlife. But first, hold on to this picture. The next time you believe that one small indulgence is harmless, remember that in the body, even a crumb can be a switch, and switches change everything. When I first began to untangle why so many people failed on calorie counting, I discovered the real conductor of weight was not the number on a food label, but a hormone called insulin, and the way it behaves explains why 2 meals with the same calories can take you in opposite directions. Think of insulin as the gatekeeper. If it is high, the gate slams shut and every bite you take is stored. If it is low, the gate swings open, and your body finally draws on its own reserves. Now here is the shock. Even a modest serving of refined starch can send insulin climbing for hours, while a portion of protein-rich meat may barely nudge it at all, and that difference decides whether you are burning fat or guarding it like a locked vault. Add cortisol to the mix, the hormone your body releases when you are stressed or short on sleep. And it is as if someone is pouring sugar from your liver straight into the bloodstream, forcing insulin even higher and leaving you wired but drained. A cruel twist when most fat burning actually happens during deep sleep. Fiber, on the other hand, acts like a cushion, slow and steady. So an orange lets sugar trickle in gently, while orange juice floods your system in minutes. And that is why the same fruit can either protect you or harm you, depending on its form. Studies from Harvard and the National Institutes of Health have confirmed that diets high in refined starches and added sugars provoke sharp insulin surges, while whole foods with natural fiber blunt those spikes and protect metabolic health. This is why one person eating whole potatoes feels satisfied and stable, while another living on processed crackers feels jittery and hungry soon after. The calories may match, but the chemistry does not. Here is the hopeful side. When you shift your plate toward foods rich in fiber and omega-3 fats, like steamed vegetables or a spoon of cod liver oil, you lower the hormonal noise, your cravings calm down, and you discover it is easier to go longer between meals without suffering. So, the lesson is not that calories are meaningless. It is that calories are messengers whose voices change depending on the food. Some whisper peace, while others shout chaos. Hold on to that thought, because next I will take you inside real cases where patients discovered how one simple change flipped the switch from storing to burning. And the results may surprise you. Not long ago, a man in his 40s sat across from me, lean and fit from running marathons, and he told me with a grin that he could eat pasta every night and never gain an ounce. And he was right. For his body in that season of life, the flexibility was still there. His muscles soaked up glucose like a sponge. His insulin stayed tame, and his weight held steady. That is the advantage of youth and training. The margin of error is wide. The body can bend without breaking. But then I thought of a woman in her late 50s who had tried the same trick, trusting the slogan that calories in and calories out was the only truth. And within months, her waist expanded, her sleep fractured, and her blood pressure began to climb. And this is the danger. The same diet that is harmless for one can be toxic for another. The pitfall of believing that all calories are equal grows sharper when we look at sugar. Because glucose can be burned by every cell, but fructose has only one door, the liver. And when high fructose corn syrup floods that door, it clogs the system and stirs inflammation. Researchers at the University of California have shown that diets high in this artificial syrup drive fatty changes in the liver within weeks, while natural sources like honey carry antioxidants that soften the blow. So here is the lesson in contrast. One person may tolerate more carbohydrates thanks to their training, but another whose metabolism has slowed faces a very different outcome. And pretending the rule is the same for both is like giving every patient the same prescription, regardless of their illness. It is not just ineffective, it can be dangerous. I tell my patients that the body keeps score. It remembers every surge of insulin, every restless night, every overload of syrup hidden in a soda can. And over years, that scorecard decides whether you thrive or struggle. So before you shrug off warnings because your neighbor seems to eat anything without harm, pause and ask whether your own body is sending different signals. And remember that ignoring them does not erase the cost. In a moment, I will share how shifting to a low-carbohydrate plan with built-in fasting windows can turn those signals in your favor, quieting cravings and finally letting your body burn what it has stored. But for now, hold on to this truth. Not all calories are the same, and not all bodies play by the same rules. When patients finally reach the point of exhaustion with calorie counting, I invite them to try a different map, one built around lowering insulin through fewer carbohydrates and gentle fasting windows. And I have watched lives change. The strength of this approach is that it quiets the constant hunger. When insulin stays low, cravings fade, and people are surprised by how naturally they can go from one meal to the next without snacking. Studies published by the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition have shown that low-carbohydrate diets improve insulin sensitivity and reduce abdominal fat even in older adults. And intermittent fasting helps the body tap into stored energy instead of begging for the next bite. The beauty is not just in the numbers on the scale. It is in deeper sleep, steadier moods, and blood pressure that drifts back towards safer levels. Yet, I am honest about the drawbacks too. The transition can be uncomfortable in the first days. Some feel lightheaded or irritable until their metabolism adapts, and for those on certain medications, changes should always be guided by a physician. But when balanced carefully, the advantages outweigh the hurdles, and the shift often feels like moving from a storm into calm weather, your body finally working with you rather than against you. I remember a man in his 60s who began with a simple rule: no snacks after dinner, and within weeks he noticed his energy stretch further into the day, his belt notch loosened, and for the first time in years he said he woke up clear-headed. That is the kind of small but powerful change I want for you, not deprivation, but liberation. So as you close this chapter, ask yourself if the old story of calories in and calories out has served you or chained you, and imagine what could happen if you gave your body a new story where hormones lead the way. It is never too late. Not at 50, not at 60, not at 70, to choose foods that nourish rather than drain, and to space your meals so your body can finally burn what it has been saving. If you have walked this road or are ready to begin, share your experience, your doubts, or your questions, because your story may be the very spark that keeps another person from giving up. And if you want step-by-step guidance, stay with me for the next lesson, where I will walk you through the practical steps of putting this plan into action in your own kitchen.